Welcome back to the channel. If you have been trying to control everything around you and it still feels like life keeps slipping through your fingers, this video is for you. And if you have ever thought, if I could just fix one more thing, if I could just make one more person understand me, then I would finally relax. I want you to listen closely. Because the mind that believes peace comes after control is a mind that will never stop working, never stop worrying, and never stop bargaining with the universe. Tonight I want to tell you a story, not as a lecture, but as a living journey. It is a story about a person who believed that control was love, that planning was safety, that managing everyone was the same as caring for them. And it is also a story about what happens when life refuses to be managed, when the wind knocks down the careful structures we build inside our heads, and when the only way forward is to release the grip, not because you give up, but because you wake up. His name was Elias. Elias grew up in a home where unpredictability was normal, not always loud, not always violent, but always uncertain. A father who could be warm one day and distant the next. A mother who held the family together through constant vigilance. The kind of vigilance that teaches a child a silent lesson. If you pay attention to everything, you can prevent disaster. That lesson shaped Elias more than any school could. He became the kid who remembered deadlines, who noticed moods, who tried to keep conversations smooth. Teachers called him responsible. Friends called him reliable. Adults praised him as mature for his age. And inside, Elias felt a strange pride, like he had discovered a secret weapon. Control. Control meant he could anticipate problems before they arrived. Control meant he could protect himself from disappointment. Control meant he could protect others from their own chaos. He thought this was wisdom. He thought this was strength. But what he did not realize was that control was also fear in a suit and tie. Fear pretending to be a plan. When Elias left home and became an adult, the pattern did not disappear. It expanded. He chose a career that rewarded precision. He chose relationships where he could feel needed. He organized everything: calendars, budgets, meals, goals, even emotions. He became the one who remembered birthdays, arranged trips, solved misunderstandings. When friends fought, he mediated. When co-workers panicked, he steadied them. When his partner felt uncertain, he proposed solutions before she even finished her sentence. People appreciated him, at least at first. But appreciation is not the same as peace. Often, appreciation feeds the very addiction that keeps you restless. Elias learned to feel valuable through being indispensable. That is one of the most common traps for a good heart. Here is how that trap works. You do something helpful. People praise you. Your nervous system calms for a moment. You feel safe. Then the praise fades, and the nervous system returns to its old baseline of alertness. So you help again, but bigger, more organized, more intense, more controlling. You call it responsibility. You call it love. But inside, it is a hunger for certainty in a world that will never promise it. Elias did not see the hunger until life showed him. In a language that cannot be argued with, it started with small cracks. His partner, Nora, began to pull away emotionally. She did not say it at first. She just became quieter, less excited, less eager to share. Elias noticed. Of course, he always noticed. And he did what he always did. He tried to fix it. He asked questions like a detective. He offered solutions like a consultant. He scheduled date nights like a manager. He researched communication strategies as if intimacy could be assembled with the right instructions. But Nora did not feel loved by the solutions. She felt managed. One evening, she said something that hit Elias like cold water. "I do not feel like I have room to be myself around you. I feel like you are always steering me toward what you think I should feel." Elias wanted to defend himself. He wanted to say, "I am trying to help. I am trying to make us better." But something in him paused, because the truth was uncomfortable. He was not only trying to help her, he was trying to help himself. He wanted her to be stable so he could be calm. He wanted the relationship to follow a predictable rhythm so his mind could rest. He had turned love into a contract with reality. "If you behave in a way I can predict, I will feel safe." That night, Elias did not sleep well. He lay in bed listening to his thoughts race. If Nora pulls away, what does that mean? If I cannot fix this, what does that say about me? If I lose her, will I lose my identity as the dependable one? The mind kept building worst-case scenarios, like it was stacking bricks into a wall. The next day, he went for a walk, hoping movement wouldn't angle the thoughts. He ended up in a small park near an old community center. He had walked past it many times, but never entered. That day, for reasons he could not explain, he went inside. A quiet gathering was happening, not a ceremony with chanting or spectacle. Just people sitting in simple chairs, eyes closed, breathing together. At the front was an older man with a gentle face and a steady posture. The man spoke softly, guiding the room. "Notice what you are trying to control. Notice what you are afraid will happen if you let go." Elias froze. It felt like the words were aimed directly at him. He sat in the back, uneasy, curious, skeptical, and also strangely relieved, as if he had been carrying a heavy bag and someone finally named it. After the session, the older man approached him. He introduced himself as Aaron. He asked Elias what brought him in. Elias almost gave a polite answer, "Just passing by." But something in the quiet room made honesty feel safer than performance. So Elias said, "I am tired. My mind will not stop trying to manage everything." Aaron nodded like he had heard that sentence 1,000 times. He said something simple that became the seed of a new life. When you try to control what you cannot control, you suffer twice. First, you suffer because reality does not obey you. Then you suffer because you blame yourself for failing at the impossible. Elias laughed nervously, because it sounded obvious, yet it also sounded like something he had never truly accepted. Aaron invited him to come back. Elias did. At first, the practice felt pointless. Sit still, breathe, watch thoughts. Elias' mind treated it like a task. He wanted to do it correctly. He wanted to succeed at stillness. He wanted results. And the more he wanted results, the less still he felt. It was almost funny, the way the mind turns even peace into a competition. Aaron explained that the goal was not to stop thoughts. The goal was to see them clearly, to recognize the pattern of grasping, the mental habit that reaches outward to control the world, so it does not have to feel the trembling inside. He told Elias that in Buddhist teaching, clinging is a root of suffering, clinging to outcomes, clinging to identities, clinging to being right, clinging to being needed. When we cling, we are trying to freeze life. But life is movement. Life is impermanence. And when you fight impermanence, you fight the nature of existence itself. Elias wanted to argue. He wanted to say, but planning is necessary. Responsibility matters. Aaron did not deny that. He said planning is a tool. Control is an addiction. The difference is in your inner posture. Do you plan and then adapt? Or do you plan and then panic when life refuses your script? That question haunted Elias. In a good way. Over weeks, Elias began to notice the moment the addiction activated. A text message without a quick reply. A sudden change of plan. A tone in Nora's voice that sounded tired. A co-worker making an unpredictable decision. Each time, his body reacted before his mind formed words. His chest tightened. His stomach clenched. His thoughts accelerated. The mind screamed, "Fix it now." Iron asked him to practice one thing in those moments. Pause. Breathe. Name what is happening. He called it the 3-step release. First, recognize. I am trying to control. Second, admit. I feel afraid. Third, soften. I can stay with this feeling without obeying it. Elias tried it. He failed. He tried again. That is the way practice works. Not perfection, but repetition. Karma is repetition too, but unconscious repetition. Practice is repetition made conscious. One afternoon, Nora came home and said she wanted to spend the weekend alone at her sister's place. Elias felt the familiar surge. The mind immediately created a story. She is leaving. She is tired of you. You are losing control. He almost responded with questions and pressure. Where are you going? Why? What did I do? What do you need? What can I fix? But he remembered the practice. He paused. He breathed. He felt fear in his throat like a tightrope. He said, "Okay, I hope you have a good weekend." The sentence felt like stepping off a cliff, not because he did not care, but because he was not holding on. Nora looked surprised. Then she looked relieved. She said, "Thank you. I just need space to hear myself." After she left, Elias was alone with his mind. And this is where most people run back to control, because solitude exposes what control hides. Elias tried to distract himself. He cleaned. He organized. He made lists. He checked his phone. But none of it helped. The emptiness followed him from room to room. So he did something he had avoided for years. He sat down, closed his eyes, and faced the noise inside. At first, it was painful. Thoughts attacked him. You are not enough. You will be abandoned. You are losing your grip. You should do something. He noticed how cruel his inner voice had been, how it used fear as a whip. Then, beneath the cruelty, he noticed something softer, a childlike longing. Please, do not leave me alone. Please make the world predictable. Please make me safe. Elias began to cry. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears. Because he realized his controlling behavior was not evil. It was a frightened attempt to create safety. He had been trying to protect himself the only way he knew. In that moment, compassion arose, but not outward first, inward, for the part of him that had been running his life from behind the curtain of competence. This is a turning point on the spiritual path. You cannot detach if you secretly hate yourself. Detachment without compassion becomes coldness, but detachment with compassion becomes freedom. That weekend, Elias did not suddenly become enlightened. He still checked his phone too often. He still felt anxious. He still imagined worst-case scenarios. But he practiced returning to the breath. He practiced observing thoughts instead of worshiping them. He practiced allowing uncertainty to exist in the room without turning it into an emergency. When Nora returned, something had changed, not in the world, but in Elias' posture toward the world. He asked her how the weekend was, and then he listened without trying to steer. Nora noticed. She said, "You feel different, not distant, just calmer." Elias wanted to say, "I am trying." Instead, he said, "I realized I cannot love you by controlling you. I want to love you by being present." Those words were not magic. They did not erase every problem, but they opened a door. Over the next months, Elias' relationship improved in a way he did not expect. Not because he did more, but because he grabbed less. He stopped trying to predict Nora's feelings. He allowed her to have moods without taking them personally. He allowed disagreement without treating it like a disaster. He began to understand a deep principle of wisdom. You can influence, but you cannot command. You can offer, but you cannot force. You can care, but you cannot own. And here is the surprise. The more Elias released control, the more connected he felt. Because control creates distance. It turns people into projects. Presence creates intimacy. It turns people into mysteries you respect. But life was not finished teaching him. One day, Elias' company announced sudden layoffs. His department was affected. Elias felt panic rise like a storm. His mind rushed to control, update resume, contact connections, calculate savings, predict outcomes, fix everything now. Those actions were not wrong. Practical steps matter, but the panic behind them was the old addiction, the belief that if he controlled enough, he could prevent pain. That night, he went to see a run. He admitted he was scared. Run listened, then asked a question that Elias did not like. What part of this are you truly able to control? Elias listed what he could do. Prepare, apply, budget, network. Run nodded. Then he asked, "And what part are you not able to control?" Elias hated the answer. The decision, the timing, the economy, the reactions of others, the future. Run said, "Then practice putting your energy only where it can move reality. And put your surrender where reality cannot be moved." Surrender is a word many people misunderstand. They hear it as weakness. In truth, surrender is alignment with what is already true. It is seeing the limits of your reach and not torturing yourself for having human arms instead of infinite ones. Elias went home and practiced that night. He sat, breathed, and separated action from obsession. He applied for jobs. Then he rested. He made a plan. Then he let the plan breathe. He allowed uncertainty to exist without treating it like an enemy. Days later, he received notice that his position would remain, but with reduced hours temporarily. Many co-workers were not as lucky. Elias felt relief, then guilt, then a strange clarity. He realized that control had never been the true protector. Sometimes life turns out well, sometimes it does not. The difference is not whether you can force outcomes. The difference is whether you can meet outcomes with wisdom. Elias began volunteering to help co-workers who were laid off, not to rescue them, not to prove his worth, but to be kind. He reviewed resumes. He shared contacts. He listened to their fear without trying to shut it down. He practiced compassion as presence. This is another lesson from Buddhist teaching. Compassion does not erase suffering, but it changes the heart that holds it. When you stop clinging to your own security as the only priority, you feel a wider kind of peace, not because you control life, but because your heart becomes bigger than fear. At home, Elias began noticing how control showed up in smaller places too. He used to control meals, insisting on a strict health plan. He used to control schedules, getting irritated when plans shifted. He used to control conversations, steering them toward solutions. He saw now that control was not a single behavior, but a posture of mind. So he practiced releasing it in tiny moments. letting Nora choose the restaurant without needing to approve, allowing a messy room to exist without fixing it immediately, listening to a friend vent without offering advice, letting traffic be traffic without turning it into a personal insult. These tiny releases added up, like drops filling a bowl. The nervous system began to learn a new truth. I can survive uncertainty. I can survive discomfort. I can survive not being in charge. And when the nervous system learns that, the mind becomes less desperate. The inner voice becomes clearer, not the anxious voice that shouts, but the steady voice that guides. That steady voice began speaking to Elias in moments when the old pattern would have taken over. It said, "Breathe." It said, "This feeling will pass." It said, "You do not need to win this moment." It said, "Choose compassion over control." One evening, Elias visited his parents. He noticed his mother still carried the habit of vigilance. She asked endless questions. Did you lock the door? Did you save enough? Did you plan for emergencies? Elias recognized the fear beneath her words. It was the same fear he inherited. For the first time, he did not argue. He did not try to convince her to relax. He simply held her hand and said, "I know you worry because you love. I am learning a different way to love. I am learning to trust life while still being responsible." His mother looked at him like she had been waiting to hear that for years. She said, "I wish I could do that." Elias realized then that detachment is not only personal. When you detach from control, you break a lineage of fear. You stop passing the same addiction down. That is karma transforming in real time, not in a mystical way, but in a practical way. Cause and effect, pattern and change. Over time, Nora began to change too, not because Elias forced her, but because his presence created a safer space. She became more open. She shared more honestly. She stopped feeling like she had to defend her emotions. She felt respected rather than managed. Elias also learned to accept that even with all this growth, pain would still visit, conflict would still appear, loss would still happen. The difference now was that he did not see pain as proof of failure. He saw pain as part of being alive. This is a core insight of wisdom. When you stop demanding a life without discomfort, you stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, peace becomes possible. Not constant bliss, not permanent calm, but a steady background of okayness. A sense that even when waves rise, you are not drowning. You are learning to float. There was a final moment in Elias' story that I want to leave you with, because it is the kind of moment that shows the heart of detachment. Years after he first met Aaron, Elias and Nora decided to start a family. Pregnancy brought its own uncertainties, medical appointments, unpredictable symptoms, fear of complications. The old Elias would have tried to control every variable, to research every possibility, to manage every risk until his mind collapsed. The new Elias still prepared, but he did not spiral. He practiced presence. One night, Nora woke him up, anxious, feeling pain. They went to the hospital. It turned out to be a false alarm. They returned home exhausted. Elias sat in the living room, still trembling, and he felt the familiar urge to control the future, to demand guarantees. He closed his eyes and listened. The steady inner voice said, "Love her now. Breathe now. Be here now." Elias realized something simple and profound. Control always lives in the future. Presence always lives in the present. And life, the real life you are actually living, only happens in the present. That night, He held nor a hand and did not try to make promises he could not keep. He did not say everything will be perfect. He said, I am here. We will meet whatever comes with as much love as we can. That is detachment, not abandoning care, but releasing the demand that life must follow your script in order for you to be okay. Now, I want to bring this back to you, because there is a reason this teaching keeps repairing across traditions, across generations, across different kinds of people. Every mind suffers when it tries to control what it cannot control. The question is not whether you will face uncertainty. You will. The question is whether you will meet uncertainty with clinging or with wisdom. If you are like Elias, you may have learned control as survival. You may have learned to scan runes, to anticipate moods, to fix problems before they explode. That skill might have helped you once. But skills can become cages when you never update them. Detachment is the update. Detachment says, I can still be responsible without being obsessed. I can still care without gripping. I can still love without owning. And if you are afraid that letting go means you will become passive, let me say this clearly. Letting go of control is not letting go of action. It is letting go of the illusion that action guarantees outcome. You act from wisdom, then you release. You do your best, then you surrender the rest. That is why this path leads to peace. Because peace is not the reward you get when life finally behaves. Peace is the stability you build when you stop demanding that life behave. I have seen this in so many people around me. A friend who spent years trying to manage everyone's emotions, then burned out and discovered that real love includes boundaries. A relative who tried to control every detail of a wedding, then realized the most meaningful moments were the unplanned ones. A classmate who obsessed over being perfect, then found freedom when they allowed themselves to be human. The story changes, but the pattern is the same. Clinging creates suffering. Release creates space. In that space, wisdom can breathe. If this story touched something in you, I want you to reflect on one question. What are you trying to control right now that is stealing your peace? Do not answer with shame. Answer with compassion. The goal is not to punish yourself. The goal is to wake up gently. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you have your own story about detaching from what you cannot control, share it in the comments. I read them, and I know other people do too. And sometimes a single comment becomes the permission someone else needs to breathe again. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave your thoughts so we can keep building a community rooted in awakening, compassion, and real-life wisdom. Until next time, take care of your mind, treat your heart with kindness, and practice letting go, one breath at a time.